Why do you replay conversations in your head for hours, editing what you should have said differently? Why does a stranger's silence after you speak feel heavier than anything they could have said out loud? Why do you feel a flicker of anxiety the moment you disagree with someone, as if disagreement itself were dangerous? You have spent years building a version of yourself that other people approve of, and somewhere underneath that version, there is a person you have not properly met yet. Marcus Aurelius spent his entire adult life surrounded by people whose approval could have meant everything: senators, generals, a Roman public that could turn on an emperor overnight. He had every external reason to perform, to please, to calculate his every word for maximum approval. And yet what he wrote privately in the quiet hours away from all of that was the opposite of performance. It was a man slowly, deliberately teaching himself to stop needing what everyone around him spent their lives chasing. He understood something that most people never get the chance to learn until very late, that the moment you stop needing approval, the entire architecture of your life rearranges itself, not metaphorically. Literally, your decisions change, your relationships change, even the texture of your own thoughts changes. This is not a small shift. It touches almost everything. And the fifth change is the one most people don't even notice happening to them, until one day they realize months have passed, and a person they used to flinch around no longer has any effect on them at all. The first thing that changes is the way you speak. You don't notice it happening in real time, because the old pattern was so automatic it never felt like a pattern. You'll be in a conversation, and before a sentence even leaves your mouth, some quiet internal editor is already rewriting it, softening it, qualifying it, checking it against an invisible panel of judges who aren't even in the room. You say "I think" before opinions that don't need a disclaimer. You laugh slightly too long at things that weren't that funny, just to confirm you're easy to be around. You apologize for taking up space in a conversation you were invited into. Marcus Aurelius called this living by another's opinion instead of your own judgment, and he considered it one of the most exhausting ways a person can spend a life, because it requires constant maintenance of a performance that was never asked for in the first place. When you stop seeking approval, the editor goes quiet. You start saying the first true sentence instead of the seventh revised one. People notice this before you do. They start describing you as more direct, more grounded, sometimes more intimidating, not because you changed your personality, but because you stopped translating yourself through a filter built entirely out of fear. The second thing that changes is what happens in the silence after you speak. This is the part almost nobody talks about, because it's invisible from the outside. You say something, an opinion, a boundary, a piece of honest feedback, and then there's a pause. In the old version of you, that pause was unbearable. Your mind would rush to fill it. Was that too much? Did I offend them? Should I walk it back? Should I add something to soften it? You'd watch their face like a barometer, ready to recalibrate the second their expression shifted even slightly. Marcus Aurelius wrote about training the mind to remain undisturbed, regardless of what reaction follows an honest action, not because reactions don't matter at all, but because outsourcing your sense of rightness to someone else's facial expression means you never actually get to know what you think independent of how it's received. When you stop seeking approval, the silence after you speak simply becomes silence, not a verdict, not evidence. Just a pause, like any other pause, that doesn't require you to perform damage control. This alone will save you hundreds of hours of your life that used to disappear into anxious replaying. The third thing that changes is the speed at which you make decisions. Right now, every meaningful choice you make probably runs through an invisible committee before you commit to it. What will my family think? What will it look like to people who knew the old version of me? What will the people who are watching my life from a distance assume about this decision? This committee meets every single time, and it is exhausting precisely because none of its members are in the room. None of them have full context, and most of them are simply versions of people you're imagining rather than people who actually exist with opinions you've verified. Marcus Aurelius wrote that very little is needed to make a life happy, but that almost nothing is possible while constantly orienting yourself around the imagined judgments of others. When you stop seeking approval, the committee disbands. Decisions that used to take weeks of internal deliberation start taking days, sometimes hours, not because you've become reckless, because you've removed dozens of imaginary voters from a vote that was always only supposed to be yours. The fourth thing that changes is who stays in your life and who quietly disappears from it. This part is uncomfortable, and it happens whether you want it to or not. Some relationships were built entirely on your willingness to bend to agree, to accommodate, to never push back in a way that required the other person to actually meet you halfway. When you stop performing agreeableness, those relationships often cool, sometimes fast. People who liked the version of you that never disagreed will quietly find your new directness uncomfortable. Even though nothing about your character has actually changed, only the performance has stopped. Marcus Aurelius observed that people often resent in you the exact freedom they have not yet found the courage to take for themselves. This is not a flaw in you. It is simply friction between a person who has stopped seeking permission and people who are still deeply invested in needing it. What's left after this filtering happens tends to be smaller. It also tends to be real. The fifth thing that changes, and this is the one that catches almost everyone off guard, is that other people's success stops feeling like evidence against you. You don't notice this shift happening until one day someone you know achieves something significant, and you wait for the familiar tightening in your chest, the comparison, the quiet sense that their win is somehow proof of your own inadequacy. And it doesn't come. You're simply happy for them, the way you'd be happy watching weather change, with no personal stake in it at all. This is strange the first time it happens, because for years, other people's wins functioned as a kind of scoreboard you didn't ask to be part of. Marcus Aurelius wrote that comparing your progress to someone else's is one of the surest ways to lose sight of your own path entirely, because their path was never running the same race as yours. When you stop seeking approval, you stop needing to be ahead of anyone, because the entire framework of ahead and behind only existed to satisfy an audience you finally stopped performing for. The sixth thing that changes is your relationship with being misunderstood. This used to feel unbearable. Someone interprets your words wrong, assumes a motive you didn't have, walks away with a version of the conversation that isn't accurate, and your old instinct was to chase that down immediately, to correct it, to make sure the record was set straight before the discomfort of being misread could settle in your chest. Marcus Aurelius wrote that he had often seen men ruin entire days chasing the correction of a misunderstanding that, left alone, would have resolved itself or simply not mattered at all. When you stop seeking approval, you develop a strange new tolerance for being misread. Not because you don't care about truth, but because you no longer need every single person's internal narrative about you to be accurate in order to feel secure in who you actually are. Some misunderstandings you correct. Most you simply let exist, the way you'd let weather exist, without taking personal responsibility for managing how every person in your life perceives you at all times. The seventh thing that changes is the volume of your own internal voice. For years, the loudest voice in your head may not have actually been yours. It was an aggregate, a composite of your parents' expectations, a teacher's old comment, an ex's criticism, a stranger's passing judgment that somehow lodged itself permanently. This composite voice narrated your decisions before you ever consulted your own. Marcus Aurelius described the mind as something that takes on the color of whatever it dwells on most. And for most people, what they dwell on most is exactly this borrowed chorus of judgment. When you stop seeking approval, the chorus doesn't disappear overnight, but its volume drops. Underneath it, for the first time in a long while, you start to hear something quieter and entirely your own, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. Most people mistake this quiet voice for nothing, simply because it never had to shout to compete with everything else. It was never weak, it was only ever drowned out. The eighth thing that changes is what you do in rooms where you have the least power. This is the final shift, and it's the one Marcus Aurelius circled back to again and again in his private writing, how a person behaves when there is no one obviously watching, no obvious reward for performing well, no audience that matters to their reputation. In the old version of you, even these low-stakes rooms carried invisible weight because some part of you was always performing for someone, even strangers you'd never see again. When you stop seeking approval, these rooms become the most honest version of you that exists, because there's finally nothing left to perform, and what remains in the absence of performance is simply who you actually are. All 8 of these shifts trace back to the same underlying mechanism. Approval seeking is not really about other people at all. It is a survival strategy built early that mistakes being liked for being safe. For most of human history, social rejection carried real danger: exile, starvation, the loss of protection a group provided. The nervous system never fully updated for a world where a stranger's mild disapproval no longer threatens your survival. So it still reacts as if it does, flooding you with the same urgency a genuine threat would produce. Marcus Aurelius did not have access to this language, but he understood the mechanism precisely. He wrote that the things which agitate us most are not the events themselves, but our own judgments about them, and the deepest of those judgments is the unexamined belief that another person's opinion of you carries the power to actually change who you are. It never did. It only ever felt that way because no one taught you otherwise early enough. So apply this directly. First, notice the internal editor the next time it activates, and let one sentence leave your mouth unedited, just to prove to yourself that you survive it. Second, sit in the silence after you speak without rushing to fill it with explanation or retreat. Third, when a decision arises, identify which voices in your internal committee are imagined rather than real, and dismiss the imagined ones outright. Fourth, allow some relationships to cool if they were only ever built on your willingness to perform agreeableness. The goal here is not to become careless about how you treat people. The goal is to stop confusing kindness with the erasure of yourself. Weak minds need a verdict from every room they enter. Strong minds can leave a room without ever finding out what the room thought of them, and feel no smaller for not knowing. Approval was never proof that you were doing something right. Indifference was never proof that you were doing something wrong. The only verdict that ever mattered was the one you were too busy outsourcing to notice you already had the authority to give, and the version of you that exists once you stop asking permission to exist exactly as you are. That version was never missing. It was only ever waiting underneath a performance you finally stopped running. If this reached something true in you, subscribe to Ancient Mindset. This channel exists for people who want to understand Stoic philosophy, the psychology of self-worth, the hidden mechanics of approval and fear, and the long, quiet work of becoming someone who no longer needs permission to be themselves. Marcus Aurelius did not write his private thoughts to be performed for an audience. He wrote them because he had finally stopped needing one. Understanding this is not arrogance. It is the first real peace most people never get to feel until very late in life, and you don't have to wait that long to find it.